You're listening to the Spirit Podcast.
Hi, friends, and welcome to The Spirit. I'm Beck.
And I'm Steph.
Hi, Steph.
Hey, Beck.
A few episodes ago, we had an interview with June Lundgren, and in that episode, we actually had some EVPs come through. So I wanted to share that with the audience. I had to tell you that in the background behind June, it was really silent. Wherever she was conducting the interview, we didn't hear any animals, any road noises, no husbands, nothing like that. So it was a little weird when I was going through the audio and I came upon these EVPs. So the first EVP we received, June says, any dog and their brother can come through. And you're going to hear a whisper say, to learn.
Any dog and their brother can come through. Any dog and their brother can come through.
Did you hear it? It was really quiet. I'll play it again.
Any dog and their brother can come through.
The next EVP, June is saying, the thing is, people don't understand. And you're going to hear almost like a man's voice say, go on. I'll play that now.
But the thing is, people don't understand. But the thing is, people don't understand.
I'll play it again.
But the thing is, people don't understand.
Did you hear it? Do you have an ear like we do? Steph and I also want to thank our listeners. If you want to support us, go to anchor.fm/tothespirit, and on our page we have a support us button. But there are other ways you can support us. You can go to Apple Podcasts and you can give us a rating. You can leave us a review. Or you can go to our YouTube and subscribe to us. Or you can tell a friend about our podcast. And that would be really helpful. Today's show is going to be about cults. And the term cult first appeared in English in 1617, derived from the French culte, meaning worship. A cult is a system of religious beliefs and rituals that is regarded as unorthodox, with a great devotion to a person, idea, or thing. And on today's show, we have a guest, Brian Eadie. Welcome, Brian.
Hello, thanks for having me. I've always been fascinated by religious beliefs. Growing up in a religious family, I think that's why that is. I'm always fascinated by cults and how they get people to believe in their beliefs.
Yeah, I mean, cult leaders, they have commonalities, right? I mean,
there's a lot of commonalities. In fact, when I was doing the research, a lot of cult leaders, they believe that they're the second coming of Christ. That's very common in the cult community, I guess.
Well, I'd say first and foremost, probably every cult leader is a narcissist.
Yeah.
I mean, to the extent to which their narcissism is negative, like traumatic narcissism. And that's going to have effect on how the group is shaped, I would think.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
I noticed that they're charismatic leaders, and they actually tend to be a little bit of intuitive. They're able to read people, and they thrive on chaos, so they'll create crisis situations.
Right. That's what Jim Jones of famous Jonestown cult, that's what he basically did, was he created an enemy for people to believe in, and he focused those people on that enemy, which basically a lot of cult leaders do. They create enemies. They focus all their energies on that one enemy to control people. Basically what Hitler did and what a lot of leaders do nowadays. You know?
I mean, if you think about it, Hitler was kind of a cult leader.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I mean, and if you really look into it, it seems as though cults have dated back since the beginning of time. I mean,
absolutely, yeah.
Back to biblical days.
Yeah.
Now, cult leaders typically make tantalizing promises, either to change the world, change you, make you rich, make you beautiful.
Yep.
And they'll often set up a hierarchy with underlings to carry out the demands, like charisma by proxy. So the NXIVM, do you know the NXIVM cult?
Yeah, I'm not too familiar with them. They're pretty new, aren't they?
They are. Sexual. That's actually a common theme, too. There's like a sexual thing that runs through there.
Absolutely, yeah.
And the recruiters in the NXIVM were called masters, and they sought to indoctrinate slaves.
That was the cult from, like, they had a lot of Hollywood actors in it, right?
Yes. Yeah.
The one thing that I didn't research, and I wish I did, every time I'd hear about the NXIVM cult, it seemed like on regular news channels, they weren't getting into what they were doing. They were calling it a cult. They were kind of saying that they were being branded, but they weren't talking about the trafficking of children and things that were actually happening in there. Like when you were saying, there's usually a place, like something that they made an enemy, you said, out of something, or a...
Yeah, they would direct people's attention to a certain group of people or certain
I'm just
idea.
wondering what that was in the Nexium cult. I always thought, is this like a self-improvement type of thing where, you know, obviously rich people were joining this. But I thought, what's the benefit that they're supposed to be getting? Because usually there's got to be a catch. Why would they be attracted to be in there? And especially go through such a painful experience and then submit to somebody that...
Yeah, why does anybody join cults?
Yeah. And usually the rewards that are promised are in the afterlife.
It's true.
You don't even get the reward in this lifetime. You have to actually pass away, and then you get it. So it can't even be, like, proven.
Kind of like Al-Qaeda.
Like the Catholic Church.
Yeah, the biggest cult in the world.
The biggest cult in all of history, the Catholic Church.
That is true. There's a fine line, isn't there?
Between cults and recognized religions, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, even dating back to, well, even Mormonism. I mean, there have been stories that come out of the West where Mormons had infiltrated a town and they were putting billboards up that said, "Do you want to get married?" They were basically calling people into this polygamy, strange cult type thing that was going on.
Like
and
Warren Jeffs, he's the one that was the head of the... You ever hear
of
him?
Oh, yeah, that was the Latter-day Saints, right?
Yes. And they were using, like, older women to swindle, you know, money from.
Are you familiar with the word, the Moonies?
No.
I've never heard of them.
Mm-mm. How about you, Steph?
I've heard of the Moonies. Is that still a Korean name?
Yeah.
Mooney? Okay.
Oh, it is. Okay.
The originator is Sun Myung Moon. He started it in the 60s.
Was it in Korea
50s.
or Japan?
In South Korea.
Okay.
But there were Japanese branches of the same cult.
Oh, okay.
And they would come to the United States in the 50s and 60s and start branching out. And it's a variation of Christianity. And it's one of the few cults that actually has its own book, its own scripture. The scripture is called The Divine Principle. Came out in the 60s. And it's supposed to be like an appendix to the Old and New Testament. It's not supposed to replace them. So it's their form of Christianity. They wanted to combine science and faith, as they saw it as like two spheres of the same circle. You know, like science is trying to find the truth and faith is also trying to find the truth, and why not combine them to find the ultimate truth? But you might recognize the Moonies from their famous like wedding ceremonies where they would have like 3,000 people get married at once in like a football stadium. They would start these mass weddings, they were called. People would come and get married to absolute strangers, even if they were already married. You didn't even have to be a part of the church. You could still get married.
That's crazy. I mean, how did that work?
Well, it wasn't legally recognized until later on they would legally get married. But a lot of people would be set up within the church and within the cult. They would be set up with perfect strangers, different countries.
Did they live together, like in big
Not at first.
compounds?
So I read this article. It's written by Yolanda Brenner. She had this article in the Sun in the UK, and it was basically her experience with the Moonies. And once she got set up with getting married, she was separated from the husband for a while, for I think a couple months. Weren't allowed to speak or talk, and eventually they were allowed to have sex. They were told when to have sex. You couldn't just do it naturally as a husband and wife. Eventually she had 2 kids, and she eventually left the Moonies. She joined the Moonies originally because her brother was suffering from schizophrenia. And so they promised that if you join and pray, that you would cure his schizophrenia, which never actually happened. And she thought, if I actually spent the 15 years helping my brother instead of in this cult, then maybe I could have helped him. Let me read the title of her book, just to give her a quick plug. It's called Holy Candy, Why I Joined a Cult and Married a Stranger, by Yolanda Brenner. Yes, the husband she was set up with was from Ecuador. She'd never met. They just got on a plane together, went to this wedding, hardly talked. The best thing that came out of it was her kids, and she has custody of her kids. She took them away from the cult. They were very influential in politics, too. Especially the unification of North and South Korea. They really wanted that to happen.
One of the cults I read about was an Indian mystic. Now, I don't know if I can say his name either. Bhagwan Sri Rajanesh. I'm probably just butchering that. But he founded several cultist towns in Oregon.
Yeah, this is the documentary Wild Wild Country I
Oh,
was
is
talking
it?
about. Yeah.
Okay, so I didn't see the documentary, but I knew through the 1980s the communities, they were chock full of Rolls-Royce cars.
Oh yeah, that's the craziest story. You guys have to see this documentary.
And that's on Netflix?
Yeah.
And Shri, allegedly poisoned hundreds in Dalles, Oregon with salmonella bacteria in 1984 to rig the local election in his cult's favor.
Yeah,
Again,
because
with
they
the
were about to be
politicals.
kicked out by the locals. They moved into a very small town, very conservative, very old school town that was like basically farmers. They did not like these people coming in with their robes and their kind of weirdo hippie ideas. They were considered like hippies back then. You know?
They probably,
They
they
would,
looked the part.
the locals would say that they could hear the people having sex at nighttime throughout the whole compound. Like they built their own city basically with their own like lakes and rivers and buildings and everything. And it's completely amazing how much they put into this little town. That's why they didn't want to leave, because they had
Does anyone live there now? Is it like actual place?
no.
now?
They all left. Yeah.
But it's just empty. Like no one
I
has
actually
claimed
yeah.
it?
I'm not 100% sure if maybe a remnant of the religion is still there. I'm
I'm not even saying religion. Like, did anyone occupy it just for normal reasons?
I don't
'cause
think
it's
so.
there?
I don't know. I don't know if they tore it down or
It's definitely considered the first bioterrorist attack in the United States.
yeah.
Bioterrorist attack?
Yeah.
Because he poisoned them with the salmonella.
And it was in retaliation because I guess there was a bombing in a hotel where a lot of the cultists lived. So they thought they were being attacked by the locals. So it was like a back and forth of weird violence. They armed themselves with guns, the cultists, because they were afraid of the people carrying guns.
So I got kind of fixated with Charles Manson. My interest was more like, what happened to these people growing up? Like, all of them, did they have normal upbringing? Did they have abuse? And I didn't really...
Speaking of the cult people?
The cult
or-
leaders.
Oh,
the
the
cult
leaders. Like
leaders.
Manson.
Like Manson. Well, with him, at least, a lot of people know something about him because he's very famous. The one thing I wanted to research was a person I know who's kind of related to Brian and I. He's in his early 60s, and when he was a child, he was sent away by his family. He was adopted, sent away by his family to a boys' reform school. It's called Jabalt School for Boys. He said it was the most horrible, abusive place. It was run by Catholics, of course. So he was raped continually, abused by men, beaten. Slave labor, was put into solitary confinement in a place that was dug out of the ground and sometimes starved. He says there was suicides, in quotes. He goes, they weren't suicides. Because these boys died by the hands of the priests and monks or whoever was there. So it was extremely bad. Well, he told me that Charles Manson was sent there as a child because he had troubles. He was put into a lot of boys' homes during his life, and that was one of them. But yet, when I researched that, they never said he was abused there. And when I talked to this person, I said, why haven't you come forward about this place? And he said that it's just too hard to gather all these people together, get your story straight. He says, and he just wanted to get out of there. So when I even looked up if anyone's ever made a complaint about this place, no one has. I know for a fact this place was abusive because of the person I talked to. We know that Charles Manson was there, not at the same time, but probably like at least 20 years earlier. And he had been in other places where I read that Charles Manson was definitely raped by men in these other boys' homes. And also his parents never knew his father. His mother was a prostitute, also an alcoholic. They were in jail a lot themselves.
His parents?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And
His mom was a drug addict and prostitute, right?
Mm-hmm. Also, he traveled around a lot, stole a lot of cars. He ended up raping a boy at one point. Then he got married to someone. He has a son with this woman, and he's still alive now. I mean, I've seen him interviewed before on a video. Very nice person, nothing like his father. I just think that there's got to be like, well, how they say it, like with a serial killer. There's like a formula that makes a serial killer. You're kind of born maybe with some sociopathic thing that really no one can control that if you're a sociopath.
Well, yeah, if you think about any kind of cult leader is not only a narcissist, but they're kind of a psychopath, sociopath.
Yeah.
And I apologize for not knowing the man's name, but there was a man that was on Joe Rogan, and he spoke about Charles Manson. I don't know if you guys saw that.
No.
He talked about Manson being involved in MK Ultra.
Is that the LSD test that the government used to do?
Mm-hmm.
So he was tested by the government?
Well, he was actually put through this program.
Ooh, you hear that?
That was the UFO highway. They come through every once in a while. It's very busy today.
I'm familiar with Manson because of the connection with the Beatles.
Helter Skelter.
Helter Skelter and the
Yeah.
White Album. They used to listen to the White Album, him and his members of the family. And they used to get secret messages that they thought the Beatles were telling them across from England to them specifically, that basically there was a race war coming and he was going to rise up and control everybody afterwards. And Helter Skelter was that race war. When in reality, Helter Skelter was the name of a roller coaster in England that Paul McCartney wrote about and just used the name. Had nothing to do with the race war or anything, but there's other songs in the White Album like Piggies and and Revolution Number 9.
It's one of my favorite albums, by the way.
Yeah, so he's not that bad if he likes the Beatles and the White Album.
Yeah, right? Sure.
It's weird how he didn't kill anybody. He somehow gained the control of these people.
That's true. Like, he didn't go to jail for murder. He went to jail for coercing.
Coercing, yeah. And they even tried to testify, give the testimony saying that he didn't kill anybody. It was them. You know, they were trying to kind of let him go free, but then he gave his testimony and he said, there's no need for you guys to testify for me.
He came out at a time when a lot of people were looking for answers in the mid-'60s, you know, when the traditional family thing was going away. And a lot of, like, kids were going to San Francisco and the West Coast to start new lives, and he took advantage of a lot of those people. And LSD was coming out at the same time for recreational use, and he used that to persuade a lot of people, too.
Yeah, and I can imagine how much easier it would be to persuade someone on
Oh,
LSD.
Yeah.
I went through, and we all did, the teenage experience where you feel free, you're experimenting with things, and you are influential. You don't think you are. You think you're being very
Assertive.
But really you're following something without realizing it. Yeah. But we made it out.
Yeah, we did, and I don't think we ever got to the point of murder or torture.
Yeah, I don't think we had that in us. I could see where there's that point in time in a person's life where they are, like, looking for something, and all they need is that right thing to push them along. I was trying to look for, like, the spiritual power. Is there a supernatural element behind all of this too? Is there, like, a demonic power that pushes? It's really hard to find, because to me it doesn't seem that way, but I know that there is someone that I watched an interview, and he had visited Charles Manson in prison, and he thinks that he was possessed. He said that his eyes would turn black and then his personality would change in an instant.
You have to question it with the demonic, because you have demonic cults. And then you've got religious cults, as we know. And then I think they've even found evidence in Göbekli Tepe.
Yeah, and I think also during the beginning of Christianity in Greece and Rome, they had sex cults. They used to have to go and pay their due or whatever to whatever
their
god.
Orgies with grapes.
Yeah, the orgies with grapes. I know, I'm not an expert in this area either. It seems like they've always existed. Even if you look at governments, and like we were talking about Hitler, even our current government in this country, we believe we're the best nation. We, worship the American flag.
Way too much trust in leaders.
Yes, and that to me is cultish. You know,
Yeah.
I always feel like it's everywhere. It's all around.
It's even cultish when it comes to corporations and the things that we buy.
Yeah.
When people, like, only stick with Apple products and only stick with, like, Microsoft products, it's very
I'm an
cultish.
Apple fanboy. I never thought of it in those terms, actually, because when you think of cults, you just primarily think of an evil leader that is coaxing people to do crazy shit.
Right.
And they say you worship what you sacrifice to. And what do we sacrifice ourselves on a weekly basis? You know, what are we sacrificing? I don't mean sacrifice like, little animals or something, but
small children.
Yeah, just things that we purposely will spend our time focusing on to get a certain result out of something, you know. So you can look at our own behavior and what we're doing and say, am I actually involved a little bit too much in something, you know, maybe television or whatever that you're...
Scientology.
Or Scientology.
There you go.
I don't understand. After all the testimonies of people, I don't know. But then why am I Catholic? Because I could look at my belief system and go, it's just as weird as anything else. It's got its weird things.
Yeah. Let's talk about Jim Jones and the Kool-Aid.
Yeah. Grape Kool-Aid. Yeah. He's pretty fascinating, too, because he was involved in politics in the 60s and 70s a lot, too. He was a big proponent of communism. and leftist ideologies, and was known to have like racial integration in his church. He liked that. He was a big proponent of helping African Americans in the city that he started out in. I think was Indianapolis, I think. And he was very popular with everybody. He was very liked, very well known. He basically started this People's Temple religion, which basically wasn't a religion. He denounced Christianity. He thought it put women down and people of color down for hundreds of years, and he was an atheist. Eventually, like, got so paranoid about the end of the world that they went to the jungles of Guyana, I think it was called.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And killed about almost 1,000 people.
And that was horrific, the video footage.
Yeah, and there's audio recording of the last moments of them giving everybody the Kool-Aid to drink, and he's trying to tell everybody it's okay, don't worry about it. You can hear kids and people screaming in the background. And,
yeah, well, the people that tried to get out of there, did they shoot them?
Well, they had a senator come to visit the place because they were getting reports of abuse, and people couldn't leave. So this Californian senator, I think his last name was Ryan, one of the, I think, only senators that got killed during his service, He went down to the jungle and he kind of like said, this is pretty cool, because they were putting on their best face, And then he was getting notes from various people saying, please take me with you, please let me leave. And he got like 15 people to come with him back to the airplane. And that's when the guards, because they had guards preventing people from leaving Jonestown City, the guards went to the airport and shot everybody down.
It was horrible.
Yeah. And Jim Jones himself was found with a bullet wound. So people think that he committed suicide, but his son thinks he was shot.
Did the senator make it out?
No, he died.
He died.
Okay.
Yeah. He died, and some reporters for CBS died, and a newspaper reporter died from San Francisco, because that's where the church was originally based, in San Francisco. Yeah.
What was the cult that was it in San Francisco with the Hellbop?
Yeah, the hell.
Heaven's Gate.
Heaven's
Gate,
yes. That one is fascinating.
That one's
to me.
crazy, yeah. Because they all wore the same Nikes.
Yep.
Yeah.
Sweatpants
And black shirts.
Yep.
They took some chemical. Yeah, and they put bags over their heads, too.
They also, the leader was, I think, a professor or something. He was a very smart guy. Seems like they all are, these guys.
Marshall Applewhite.
Yeah.
But I remember
It was a husband and wife, and the wife died, I think 10 years before everyone killed themselves, I think.
So they thought they were hitching a ride on Comet Hale-Bopp in March.
Yeah, because there was something in the tail of that comet some people thought was an alien spaceship. They were totally into the alien spacecraft worship, kind of like Scientology.
Yeah.
They poisoned themselves with a pill, and then asphyxiated themselves with bags over their heads.
And then,
like,
crazy.
I think people came around and took the bags off, and then just placed cloth over their faces, and let them just all lay there in their bunk beds.
Now, is cyanide a painful death? I mean,
cyanide was the Jonestown.
That wasn't cyanide.
I don't know if it. I don't know. But it's just frightening to think about the kids in Jonestown being forced to drink that, and to be a parent and watch that happen to your own kids.
It's also weird to me that a group of people living together in the jungle, I'm not talking about Jonestown, but like tribal people, they're tribes. They can live together, a communal group, and they function fine.
Right.
But Westerners get together in a group, and it turns into a cult.
Yeah.
We don't know how to be tribal people anymore, I guess. I don't know.
Sedatives, vodka, and plastic bags.
There you go.
Just sedatives?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I mean, that's not enough for me to throw a plastic bag over my head. You better shoot me with heroin. Get me some, Breaking Bad meth.
I could die. Take those Benadryl after I had a couple beers.
I had a woman that owned this house that I live in, and she died of the same cause. I actually have her death certificate in my bookshelf.
What?
Yeah. But
how did you get that? They just left it behind?
Yeah, they gave me a book that came with the house. I don't know if I was supposed to return that to the library. But yeah, she passed away from the same, she was an alcoholic. She was drinking and taking Tylenol, probably for a headache. And
So I don't take Tylenol.
No, ibuprofen. And that'll kill you too.
Yeah, that'll kill your kidneys.
You'll have a heart attack.
The Branch Davidians, Waco. That's all I know.
What was his name? David
Koresh. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Now, I heard that he went to a trip to Israel, And a lot of people who have started cults, it had started off this way. They get like this messiah complex thing, and then when they return, they believe they're sent by God to do something.
Yeah, that's what I was saying earlier. A lot of these cult leaders believe that they were either Christ reincarnated or the second coming of Christ or related to Christ or something to do with Christ.
And there's this whole idea, too, is that, okay, if someone has a cult, and of course they might be doing bad things to kids.
That's what they were being accused of, the Davidians.
So is it the government's job to burst in there like they did to do that, or no? Because then it's like, there's a line to cross, you know. And
go in there, storm the Norman.
And it was also the abuse of kids and the firearms, illegal
they had a
firearms.
lot of firearms, yeah.
So
And
the ATF was there, the FBI was there.
But they look at it as a travesty how it happened, because it was disastrous.
Because everyone died. They let the children go, but everyone burned in the building. I mean, there was a shootout that initially took place that killed like 5 or 6 ATF officers, and then a couple more Davidians were shot. Then nobody knows how that started, but the fire started. Some blame the government, some blame the Davidians for starting the fire. And basically the building came down and a lot of people died from suffocation or from
there was a
rubble.
wall that came down inside and people got crushed underneath the wall.
I'm not 100% sure, but I think new evidence came out that the government were the ones the first to shoot, which wasn't the case. They were saying back in the 90s when this happened.
And this was under the orders of like Janet Reno, I think, at the time. She was the head of that, and that was a big...
The governor of Texas, I forgot what her name was. She's really famous, Republican too. Yeah.
But Janet Reno, remember Janet Reno's dance party?
I do. Guys, I'm charismatic and I'm going to start a new pasta cult. Do you want to join it?
Yeah.
Yeah?
You're going to start what?
A new pasta
cult. A new pasta cult.
Yeah, may we praise the Noodle Lord for eternity. Ramen.
That'll eventually kill us too.
Yeah, well, carb overload.
Yeah.
So, Brian, we had a great time talking with you about cults, even though it's a very depressing subject.
Yeah. It's hard to make light of. Yeah. Thank you for having me.
Oh, of course. Steph could jump in any time and say, yeah, thanks, Brian.
I'll see her on the ride home. So.
Becky's my cult leader. I do what she says.
I'm Basta cult leader. But yeah, thanks, Brian, for being here.
No problem. And in the famous words of Jim Jones... Those who do not remember the past are condemned to repeat it.
Ramen. Thanks, guys.
To the Spirit
Podcast.
Supernatural Science.
Aliens. Ghost.
Psychic. Mystic.
Spirits.
Divine Source.
Heaven.
The dead. It's magic.